gaming and then indie gaming and work for hire gaming, and been working in Unreal since 2005, I think, when we started using Unreal 3 when it first came out. So the vast majority of my experience comes from Unreal. That's like the engine that I use exclusively now. And so Devin asked me to come and give y'all a quick primer on using the Unreal editor. So I figured I could go over some basics really quick and show you some of the systems that um, I know Unreal has that Unity maybe doesn't have out of the gate, right? Some of the stuff is coming and some of the stuff is in different stages, but I wanted to just give you all an overview. And then I think after I show you a bunch of stuff, like the big basics and stuff, if folks have questions and want to see some things, um, I think that's, like I can totally run through those and show them to you. If folks have like big ticket items they want to see, we can go over those. So, and I just spoke with David a minute ago that I'm not going to show Unreal 5 today because it's really unstable. Right now, it's definitely not prime time release. And all the things I'm going to show you in UE4 will all carry over to UE5. UE5 is like UE4 plus plus, right? It's got some new cool systems in it like Nanite and the Lumen rendering that you've all seen the videos on. Like I'm not going to be able to show you better than the videos that are out there for it. So I would rather show you how to work with Unreal and be competent with Unreal than have us all stumble around UE5 and then find a couple of things that don't work. So um, first up, I figured, we'll just start in a new level here. And I wanted to show everybody like basics of how blueprinting works. Because after running my own company, Cloudgate, which was a VR content company that we publish VR games with, have I don't have a code backed experience. I have a designer backed experience and used a lot of Kismet and UE3. And all of that carries over to UE4 that you don't have to know code to use Unreal 4. You do need to know a lot of code based principles and be familiar with, everybody's tired of it, but the object oriented programming methodology of parent child classes and inheriting things and overriding functions and that sort of a thing. All of that is still present in blueprints. It's like C++ in very small wrappers that you can move around, right? So you still want to think the same way and use those same methodologies, and it will help you because you won't have to do nearly as much work. So let's jump right in and let's start off with first off, I'm going to make this map a little bit bigger so we don't fall out of the world. Um, and we can start off with a player and show you a player character really quick and how easy it is to get one set up. And hopefully it works. So um, you have this browser window just to go over all the stuff in here really quick. I don't know what everybody's level of familiarity is, so I'm going to try and cover this as like quickly as possible here. Um, Basically, you've got, your viewport window, and then you've got your content browser over here, and you've got your details pane and your world settings over here, your levels tab and your world outliner. The world outliner will show you all of the things that are in your world right now, organized by what level they're in, and if you put everything in folders within the level. Excuse me. And the levels tab, I don't think we're going to work with much here, but basically you can add sub levels here and determine if they're going to be loaded via blueprint or if they're always loaded here. So you can have streaming levels. You can have this is where you would work if you were doing a big open world game and you needed to have the world map broken up into like streamable LOD areas of your map, right? They would all be present here as sub levels of your persistent map. So let's kind of dive in. There's all sorts of other things like these content browsers, you obviously can pull them off and put them wherever you want, right? This is the format that I usually like working in. I normally work with a 2-window setup where my blueprint window is my big main window, and then this window, my editor window, I put in my side monitor. your mileage may vary, but this is my favorite one to use. Um, Actually, before we jump into the character, I want to talk about like doing world editing really quick. And I'm not going to go into too much depth because most world editors are pretty similar between engines. Um, you can just put whatever you want out here. Um, there's a neat snap to floor function if you just tap end on your keyboard. It scales, everything works the same that you've seen in other editors and everything. And you can alt drag to get more out. These automatically come up with collision on them because they're primitives. Um, any blueprints that you've created will also show up in here. So if you have, I think the closest thing to Unity are prefabs or something like that. So if you have blueprint actors set up, for instance, like if we want this wall to do something, this is an easy thing to show off. Let's do that. So we'll create a blueprint actor real quick. So we'll go to the character pawn in a minute. The base start a blueprint thing, if you just say right click, I'm going too fast. If you say right click and then come through here and say, I want a new blueprint class, right? You have a lot of more detailed options here for all sorts of things that you can make. And we could explore this for an hour. But what we want is a blueprint actor, because an actor is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. So we're going to say, I want a new blueprint actor. We're just going to call this BP spinning square, just to show off the different things that you can do as an example of blueprints and why you want to use them, right? So we're going to open the blueprint spinning square here. And we're going to put that same cube we were using in here just to make life easy. You have access to all sorts of things in here. If you don't want to use a primitive, you can say, I want to spawn a static mesh. And then over here on the right in your details pane, you can go to your drop down and you can start clicking, like your entire project's worth of static meshes that you have open in your editor are all going to be in here, right? So let's just find a door. So I'm sure we have a door in here somewhere. I hate this preview thing that keeps popping up over it. It's kind of a pain in the butt when you're trying to look at something. I want a glass door here, a wood door with a static mesh. So it's going to take a minute to load it. Hopefully it's not going to freeze up on me here. There it is. And it's caching the shaders. And now the shaders are in for the door. And now our door's in there, right? So now we've got a door. And while we could have just dragged the static mesh out into the world, and let's do that just to show you what that looks like. So I've selected it, the hourglass, so I can find it, the same exact one, right? If I drop this in the world, there's a door in the world, and you can alt drag it and do whatever with it, right? But like, if you wanted to give it an instruction, and this isn't what you want to do with a door normally, but we're going to do it anyway. I have to go back to my blueprint door. Where do we hide it? It was in here, right? And developers. So if we go back in here, let's dock this. We can give it instructions, right? And for now, we're just going to give it the simplest thing we can that we can see it moving is it gives you these events, and these events are where things get fired off in your graph. And your blueprint graph is where you're going to put all of the logic for this thing and how it works. You have event tick, which is obviously this happens every single frame that the engine tries to deliver. It's going to run event tick. So don't lean on this. Like this, you can get bad performance if you use this too much. But you can use it. Like use it when you need it, right? Excuse me. So but we're going to delete it. It's there. We can get it back. It's not like we're losing it. And then we don't need on begin overlap. I just want to begin play because I want this to happen as soon as this starts, right? So what I want to do is I want to take the static mesh, which is the door. Let's just rename it door so it's easier to see in the graph. And we want to rotate it. We just want it to spin, right? So I'm not even telling what I'm doing. I'm assuming you guys know what I'm doing. So everything in your graph will have some sort of a pin on it, right? And this pin has all of the data that you could possibly get out of the static mesh. And if you drag off of it and let go, you will now get a browser window that's going to show you literally all actions taking a static mesh component object reference, because it's a static mesh inside of a blueprint, and you see it's up in the component tab. That means that it's a static mesh component. It's this exact door in there is a static mesh component, whereas the door we dragged into the level is called a static mesh actor, right? So we want to take this component and we want to do a thing with it, and there's all sorts of stuff you can do in here. But what we want to do is we want to rotate it. So I'm just going to type in here rotate, and we have context sensitive on, and of course rotate isn't showing up. Set rotation. There we go. So what we want is set relative rotation. World rotation will rotate it based off of its world location, and we don't want that. We want it to rotate around its relative axis. So we're going to say set relative rotation. And the relative axis, if we go to the viewport and we select on it, you can see is down here. Hey, the person who built this door is actually a really nice person. And they put it in the right place, which means it's where the door is hinged. So if I set it to rotate, you can see when I rotate it, it rotates like a door, right? So what we're going to do is just have some silly fun with it. And we are going to say, we want to rotate this. And if I set this on begin play and I just leave this in here, and I do nothing else with it, I can just say, I want this to have a new Z rotation. And in Unreal, I'm not sure what Unity's is, but Unreal has it's whatever you call this, right? Is X forward and Z up is all you have to remember. Y is right. And those are the positive axes, right? Axes, X is forward, Y is right, Z is up. So we know Z is up. So if we're going to rotate it like a door, we want to rotate it on the Z axis, right? So I'm just going to type in 90 for now. And I'm going to compile it. And if I go back to the level, it's still facing the right way, right? And I should get like some sort of default pawn here if I set begin play. But when I actually play this, I should spawn here and I should be looking forward and we should see the door on edge, except that we told it to rotate 90 degrees. And I am in the world and it's not doing it. So that's cool. We expected that. Then I begin play, set relative rotation, teleport it. Oh, I know why. Ha, because we didn't actually put it in the world. So remember when I said that's different than the one that we put in the world? The one in the world is just a plain static mesh actor. It's not our blueprint. That was dumb. We got to put the actual blueprint in the level. Okay, it's in the level now. Now it's going to do it. We're still going to be on the floor because I haven't given us a player character yet. But now, the door's rotated 90 degrees, right? If we fly up in the world, you can see it's now different than where it was before. It is now set in a 90-degree open position, right? Will I spawn in higher if I set this higher? I doubt it. No, I'm still at 0 because I haven't set a character. We'll fix that in a minute. We'll do that next. I just wanted to show you the basics of blueprinting really quick. So what we can do to have even more fun with this is there's all sorts of stuff you can do, but I'm going to show you a timeline really quick. I'm just going to call timeline 0. That's fine. So we're going to set this to play from start on begin play and on update, and it will update every tick. That's what update means. What we want to do is we want to tell it to do a thing. So we're going to open the timeline, and it's going to give us a sort of like linear editor, and it's set to 5 seconds right now, but that's always too long for the most part. So we're going to set this to just rotate on a float track. And we can do this all sorts of ways. I always like to say there's more than one way to do something in Unreal. And I'm going to show you how to do this 2 different ways really quick. So we're just going to set 2 keys in here. One is 0 and the other one is 360. And this is the obvious. We're going to rotate this thing over 1 second, 360 degrees, right? And if we come back out, we're saying update, and we forgot to name the track. Sorry. Let me rename this to rotate float. So we know what that is. And if anybody else is looking at our stuff, they know what it is. So if I try and plug rotate float in a new rotation, it won't take it because this is a single float and a rotation is technically 3 floats, right? It's an X, a Y, and a Z float. And to access it, all you have to do is right click on this pin and say split struct pin. And now you notice the colors are the same, which means you can connect them. So we want to take rotate float and we want to add it to the Z rotation of this object. Two quick things I want to explain is there's teleport and sweep. Teleport means we're going to teleport the physics state every tick and not sweep for physics. Whereas sweep means I want you every tick to check physics, right? So the door could punch something out of the way if we wanted to. So now I'm going to refresh this. And now when we say begin play, now the door is rotating and it only does it once and then it stops because we set it to a second. So if we come back in here, we can set it to loop. And if we press play, now it's just going to, you son of a gun. No, that was replicated. We don't need it to replicate. We just want it to loop. Now it'll do it. Now it's just going to keep rotating, right? So as you can imagine, like cheap, easy way to do radar dishes, things like that, right? There's also another trickier way we can do this, and I use this a lot. And actually, I'm going to skip over it because we're already at like 6:15, and I want to move on and get to some other beefier subjects in here. Let's put a player pawn in here really quick, so that we have an easier view when we're running around in here, right? So let's create a new pawn character, which is what we want to pilot, right? And we're going to call it just BP pawn. I'm going to open this up. We're going to give it a camera. Camera. And I think that's all we need to do. I want to check class defaults on this really quick because this always burns me every time. Yeah, input is enabled. Thanks for making that default. So now we want to pilot BP pawn around. And I actually want to give it, just be on the safe side. Capsule collision. That is, I think we want to, nope, 90 half height. And get a capsule radius of not quite that big. 35, and we'll move this up to like head. Nope, not that. Camera, attach to the capsule, and move this up to head height. Now, if we go back in our level and we go over to our world detail settings and we change this to, we may need to make a new one. Because I don't think there's a default one that we can edit. Yeah, we're just going to make a quick new one so we can edit it. For developers, new game mode is fine. And then under pawn class, we're going to use our, excuse me, our blueprint pawn. This is like the game mode settings, and what it does is it controls the highest level functions of the game. You can put game types and game states in here, what kind of a character pawn you want to spawn in when you start. If there's a default HUD for the screen, you can tell it to be here. All sorts of stuff in here. We just want to make sure that we can force this to spawn our player pawn here when we start. Let's see if we get, hey, guess what? We have a better camera now. But we have no input controls because we haven't given it any input controls yet. So I can go over what some of those are if folks want to see input controls. But what you can always do if you prefer, instead of making your own, is if we just go to a default pawn instead, we should be able to move around. Yep. So now we have like the UE4 default pawn, and this is a flying pawn that it has collision. It can't go through the floor. Like I'm trying to sink through the floor. If I fly up and try and fly back down, I'll stop at the floor. And if I get too close to the door, or the door doesn't have collision, it should push me away. Let's try and make that happen. Let's go back to our spinning square, and that means we need to make sure that the door has collision on it, and I bet you it doesn't. It claims that it does. It's saying that collision presets are set to block all dynamic. You never want it, your character to step on it. It has generate overlap events. I also want it to simulate hit events. And you can see it's in the default for block all dynamic. All of the collision is set to block by default, but it's not blocking us, right? We went right through it. And this is like a classic example. I've done this enough times that I will bet you that this static mesh does not have collision on it. Nope, it does. I am wrong. Let's check its collision. And it's set to block all, so that's interesting. So that means that our player pawn, the default pawn, doesn't have collision for this type on it. So let's check that really quick. I don't know if we can edit the default pawn, but we can make one inherit from it, and we can set that. So let's go back to default pawn. Yeah, that's a base class. So let's make a new one. Let's change our pawn. No, we'll just make a new one, and we'll make an inherit, and I'll show you how to inherit. Remember the parent-child class thing we talked about a minute ago? So we're going to make another blueprint class, but instead of just clicking the pawn button here, because this starts like a raw like pawn, right? No, I can't check now. It's fine. What we want it to inherit from here is default pawn. So we're going to say, I want to make a new pawn based off of default pawn, which is what we just used, right? So we're going to set this as our BP. Nope. Come on, let me type. Rename BP new default pawn. We're going to come in here. Oh, and that's why. So it has a mesh component in here that's probably set to hidden. Nope, it's still visible in game. We're going to set it to hidden. But this says collision enabled, but I don't think it's actually working. Because this having collision on it should do the trick. So the collision presets are set to pawn. It should have worked. Let's try it one more time. Now we need to come in here, though. We need to set our new one to new default pawn instead of default pawn. So let's type new, and it's not showing up. Why not show up? BP new. Why do you hate me? That should be allowed. That's parent class's default pawn. Mm.
If I could interject for a second,
Yeah.
not to disrupt this, but when you were creating the door, you turned off the physics on it. Is that
Yeah, that's okay.
what's going on?
Yeah, no, that's a good catch, but it's okay. So, if I go back to the spinning door, it shouldn't need physics, but we can find out. Simulate physics, it's probably going to break now when I'm rotating it. So, it don't think it needs simulate physics on, but we're about to find out. You might be right. Yep. Now I'm getting pushed at least. So you were right. Well, it was pushing me a little. Now it's not pushing me. Oh, now the door's getting pushed though. This is why we don't turn it on. Because I just want it to push me, and it should, with its collision, be able to push me. But any rate,
And now we have the door game.
yeah, now we're pushing the door around, right? So any rate, this might be a little bit trickier than I have time to solve right now, but the this mesh component should be, I'm just going to set it to block all dynamic and see what happens. And I'm going to go back and turn the door to not have physics on it. Because you shouldn't need to have both having physics on it to get pushed by it. Yeah, this door is just not interacting with me. It does when I hit that very, like, if I go to this edge of it, it was pushing me. It's not there. Any rate, we could dig into it. It's probably a little bit deeper than I want. I think I have like regenerate, overlap. Do I have like events on? Any rate, we can dig into this another time. I want to make sure we have enough time to cover everything. But this is like the base of how you would at least start playing around, right? You have a pawn that you can move. You have a spinning door that you can interact with. And you can set all sorts of stuff in here. You can change your materials in here. If folks want me to show you materials, I can show you materials. I can show you bigger systems like landscape editing in this to put plants in a scene so they're performant. Do folks have a preference of what they want to see? I can't hear anybody
The
if they're talking.
landscape sounds good.
Okay. And let's look at landscape really quick. So I'm going to remove this and all of these. And let's drop a landscape in. So a landscape is like a custom kind of, think of it like a custom kind of a floor, right? That it's 2D and that it will have a third Z depth, but it's always a plane that is going to get edited. It's not like a cube or a sphere or anything like that, right? And it comes in by default really huge, and you can change the scaling on it and stuff like that. But first thing you want to do is you want to find, let's see if I have any loaded in here that are default landscape materials. Because some landscape materials are better than others. Let's just put this grass on it for now. And then, of course, the shader is going to have to compile first for a minute. But basically, you've got this giant piece of landscape that you can edit now. And if you come over to your modes on here, I'm used to it being over there, where you can go to the landscape editor, right? This is all new in 426. This is not what I'm used to seeing. That's hilarious. The create or import, we have one here. Where's my landscape editing? Oh, duh, it's on a tab. No landscape. Where'd it go? Oh, we probably had to tell it to be placed in there. My bad. Yeah, we didn't create it yet. So let's create it. So now we have a landscape that we can edit, and it's Z fighting like crazy right now. So let me go back in. No, fine. Yay, we're editing the landscape. I want to leave this mode and go back to select for 1 second because I'm sick of this Z fighting. Go down there. Now let's go back to landscape mode. So, in the sculpting mode, this is like if you've ever played Populous before, this is what you're doing. And it looks like by default, it's currently set to raise height map. So if I just left click, you can just generate mountains, right? Really quickly. And if we go back real quick, oh, I really don't like this being here. It was so much easier before to switch modes. I'm going to go back to my world outliner really quick and grab my player start. And now my player start's buried. So let's put it somewhere where we can actually spawn back into the world again. And so if we come into the world, no, give me this window back. You can see now we've got, our giant mountain and it has collisions. So I'm forced to like run up the mountain. I'm more flying up the mountain. You can see how big it is. You can test your scale with it, right? But I have a flying pawn, so I can just fly off the end of the mountain right now. So you can see like there's a ton of tools in this, and I'm not going to go too deep into it because this is for you to have fun with. If I go back into sculpt, there's erosion that when you paint it, it will try, and it's going to be hard to see at this scale without the right materials on here. But you can set erosion and stuff to actually try and do what erosion would do. You can see it's causing some vertical lines in the side of the hill, like rain cutting through the mountain, right? And like the more you burn it in there, the more you can see the lines showing up. So it adds like what should look like erosion in the side of a mountain as you mess over it, but it will also erase down. This is new. I haven't seen this hydro before. I think it's the same thing. It looks like it's trying to make like a water basin, right? Noise, that's new. Looks like it's a like an ad with a better noise filter on it. So there's all sorts of fun stuff you can have it. And you can mess with the strength, right? And the radius, like you can make your thing really, really tiny so that you have like super fine detail if that's how you want to work. Or you can make it, like world endingly large, which if I have to zoom way out, right, to see how big you can make this stuff. So, and there's like smooth and flatten, so you can make mesas and right. You can like play with this for days and just brush the heck out of it. There's also the paint mode, and this is the really neat part. I don't have enough layers, I think, for this because I'm using the wrong material. You can build materials that you can have different uh like different layers to the material that the material set to if it goes to like a certain verticality, it switches to the rock material because like moss and stuff and dirt can't grow at that elevation, right? So you can set it to at different elevations, show a different material. So it'll auto paint your mountains as mountains. And in this instance, like this surface, the vertical surface here would be rock and the top would be grass. And I wish I had a better thing installed for this. Let me go back to manage really quick. And let's go to the landscape and nope. Oh, I should have gone with an older version than 426 because I have not messed with landscape for a few versions. And they have changed it on me. Because there should be in here a way to just add. Nope. Right clicking does nothing to change the material on it. And I think I have to do it in here and get the right material here. Is what it looks like. And these are all single instances and not like. And I think the one that came with the one pack that I installed for this does not have a robust material in here. I think they hand painted it all. They didn't put the layered stuff in, but you can find other tutorials for that kind of stuff online for how to do the proper painting of it. Um, even when painting it, if I had a different landscape material and they have to be set up for landscape, these all look like they're identical. Yeah, they are. You can, here, this claims it's a landscape. Let's see what happens when we use it. It's thinking because it's compiling the shader. Come back. There it is. Oh, it's just going to set it to the whole thing. Ah, this one actually has it. You can see over here on the left. So this one is set up correctly. That has a grass, a gravel mud, a mud, and like a bricks. Well, bricks isn't great. That's for roads, right? But this layer has no info assigned yet. You must create or assign a layer. Oh, it's not set up right. We can't do it. Any rate, you can. This is what it would look like if you set the material up right for it. I know I'm blowing this part of the demo, so I apologize. But at any rate, I'm going to go back so I can change this real quick because this is now annoying that it's this dark. And just go back to the green one that we had before. So at least we can see it. So there's also the foliage editor, which, hey, guess what? It's also different, which is fantastic. But I think we have some already pre-built, so this will be easier to work with. Not Seaside Town. We want, and this does go along with, here we go. This one has some foliage stuff in it. Nope. It has stuff we can make, so we can at least make it. So we can add a foliage type, and we want it to be an actor foliage. Sure, why not? No, we want it to be a static mesh foliage. Call it static mesh foliage, and it's going to ask us what we want to use for our foliage. So we're going to go right back to where we were here in this flowers and plants and nature pack. We're just going to go in the meshes or not. These are static meshes. Why can't I select these? Why do you hate me? Let's go back to the actor one. All right, if you're going to be like this, we're going to do it the hard way. Can we just drop it? All right, so it's going to auto make it if we drop it up here. So now we've made a flower bouncing bet or whatever, probably bouncing Betty, right? But it's easier to see trees, so let's make some trees first. Let's grab these super lush ones, this poplar. So we'll add a poplar tree. Come on, don't crash. Okay, Unreal, we're just doing a demo. Drop it there. And then, is there a grass in here? Because I want to show you guys what the grass looks like too. Yeah, they do. Go away. I need to look at what this one looks like first. I think this is what I want. Nope. That's only one plane of grass. Go back. Check this clover real quick. All right, well, this will kind of work because this is at least more than one plane. So let's make a clover. Now we have grass clover, bouncing Betty plants or flowers, and the tree. So we're going to turn these other two off. And so we just have the tree selected. And if we go in the tree, we can set all of this cool stuff up on the tree, like how dense it is, like how many it will paint in a specific area, how far away they should be from each other, right? So they're trees, so they should be at least, say, 150 Unreal units away from each other. Should probably be more than that, but we're going to set that for now. Scaling is uniform, but you can set it to be what you want. And then you can set a range of scale. So we can say, like, we want these trees to be 0.85 short, and we want them to be 1.5 times tall. So we get some variety. You can set Z offset, which is great. That we want a zero min Z offset. We don't want it to go above the ground, but we do want it to go below the ground by up to 50 Unreal units. So it'll dip through the bottom of the ground instead of sit on it. You want it to actually penetrate a little bit, especially if they're going to be in like parts where there's hills, right? And you can even set this to be like, I wanted a min of -40 and a max, or min of -50 and a max of -40. So it has a little bit of variety and it will always penetrate the ground. You can have it to align to normal, which for trees you don't want. You want that for plants because, right, like trees grow on the side of a hill straight up. If we aligned it to normal, it would grow perpendicular like this, which would look really bad, right? Trees always grow mostly straight up and down. Plants can grow off the side of a hill like this, right? So if we were doing plants, we'd set this to yes, align to normal. For trees, you don't want it. You can have random yaw, which is going to be how rotated they are, and that's always a great thing to just leave on. You can have a random pitch angle, which is great. So you can set it to be like, I want there to be, like within 5 degrees. It'll tip one way or the other a little bit. And then the height range is where it will actually spawn in. Anyway, all of this other stuff is great. Cull distance, how far away you want it, and everything. All sorts of details. This is already a lot of good detail, especially because it already also has the ground slope angle on here. So we can say they will only grow at max on a 45-degree slope. If it goes higher than that, trees won't grow on it, which is also true for nature, right? So now if we take our brush out and we start painting, we start getting trees spawning in, right? And now we're painting trees in and they're way too tight together. So that looks terrible. So we're going to hold shift and we're going to erase the trees real quick. So get out of here. And then obviously our light will need to be rebaked, but we'll deal with that some other time. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to say that 150 separation we gave them is not nearly enough. We're going to say, make it like 1500 apart from each other. And now we're too far apart. Now it's having a hard time painting them in. So we'll say it's more like 750, right? And we'll erase them. Oh, we went way too far and back. But now we're getting like, all right, that's a really decent looking dense forest. You can see it's changing the height of the tree. You can see it's changing the rotation of the tree, and it's even see how this one's sticking out of the side a little bit. This is why we say like penetrate it, right? Like go below it. Even though some of these, if we wanted to move them one at a time, would look great like this, right? Like, yeah, that would look pretty cool with some other stuff around it. But like it would look really bad if it was just like up here, right? And its default position, it looks like should be about, it's a little higher than that. Like that, right? So, and you'll notice that I bet you I can't paint this. Let's fly up. If it'll let me fly up. I bet you we can't paint this on the side of the hill. So let's go back to paint. And I'm painting now and it won't let me put it there until I get down on that slope, right? Because remember we set that rule where it's like trees can't grow on this. So you can't paint them on there. But if I came in here and I said, okay, turn the tree off and put this on here, right? If I said, let's edit this guy, this says, where was it? This has a line of normal on it, and it probably won't let me paint it here on the side. Why not have it? Turn that on. Yeah, it won't let me paint it here on the side, but if we go into it and we say, the ground slope angle, like, nothing is forbidden, right? Why does it keep on checking that? It should let me. Why are you not playing nice? Where's my max ground slope angle? Did it even accept it? It did. Paint it. There it is. Now it's painting it on the side. So we got it higher than 90. So now they'll grow on the side. And because they're aligned to normal, still doesn't look right. But you can see how it's different, right? And if we wanted to do grass cover, we can set this density to way higher. It's set to 0 away from each other. But if we set this to like 1,000, we would now be able to create a lot of ground cover. And you're going to have to be careful with this because you can make it not perform it by putting too many in. But the beauty of this, and the reason I'm showing it to you, is because if I click on it, I have select on. If I hit the all button, you notice how everything's selected? Every tree, every plant, everything I put in here, it's all being selected at once because this is an instance foliage. This doesn't count as every single static mesh as its own actor in the scene. And you can set these up to auto cull and auto show up at distance so that they fade in and out at the right distance. And this is great for larger open world type experiences. You can do anything with this. You can build a city with this if you really wanted to. You'd have to be careful, but you could do it. And Unreal has also done a good job now of exposing the instant static mesh as an actor type that you can start putting in levels, but you have to spawn them in. And that's how you can do urban cities really well. It's using the same idea of what the instance foliage editor is doing. And that's like the super rough overview on landscapes. Does anybody have any questions about this, or is there something else you want to see really quick? Because we have like 15 minutes left. But I want to make
Yeah.
sure if there's something somebody wanted to see that we cover it.
Can we look at particles real quick?
Yeah, let's take a look at particles. So let me close these. I'm just going to start a new level again. We'll use this one just so we have something clean. And I'm going to open a particle first, and we can go over some stuff that's in the particle editor. I'm not going to show you Niagara right now because Niagara is a more complicated version of, I believe it was called Cascade is the original one. Niagara is like the particle editor with blueprints in it. So you have way more robust things you can do with it. But to understand Niagara, like it helps to have an understanding of Cascade, I think was called the old particle editor. And Niagara is like a little bit more complicated where I don't have a particle folder in here. I'm going to have to grab one out of another. I'm pretty sure there's fire in here. No, not here. I have to do it this way. Content, search for fire. Can of fire, big fire. I think big fire will work fine. Let's take a look at it. Going to take a minute because it has to compile a shader, so it's not going to look like it's doing anything. I can see them flickering here, but I don't know if you can see it from the black levels. There we go. So now we've got fire going, and you can see as I move the camera around that this is a bunch of planes that are spawning in, running through a sprite sheet that are rotating the face of the camera, which, this will work great as a background fire that's happening in the background, right? Because it would be harder for the player to detect that the sheets are rotating. But the idea is that you've got these emitters in here, and you can add new ones. I can say make a new particle sprite emitter that will happen right here, and it's going to start sending little, like the default thing is that it just starts sending sprites skyward, and there's just these little guys on them. So why don't I start a new one, and we can go over like some of the things that it's doing. I just wanted to show you, like, you could do fire with it if you wanted to. You can make it, spray things. You can have it be a GPU particle that is affected by gravity, right? You can make sure it has collision on it. You can do all sorts of stuff. So let me start a new one really quick and go to developers and not have fire. And we will do a new particle system. I'm just using the same browsers we did before. That's fine. New particle system. So here we are. We've got this thing spinning particles up that we had earlier. I am going to put it in the level so you can see it doing its thing in the level. It's set. Most particle systems in Unreal are set to auto activate. And as you can see down here in the details pane, it's set to auto activate. If I set that to false, it won't run until you trigger it. So we're going to tell it to run right out of the gate so we can watch it do its thing. And you can come in back in here and you can do all sorts of stuff with this. First up, I just want to show you the basic parts of it is that the required part and the spawn part are like, you can't get rid of these. They're always going to be here. And in required, this is where you're going to set your base parameters for it. Since this is a like sprite-based particle emitter, you're going to need to give it a texture or a material. And right now it's using default particle, which is their little painted gizmo thingy here, right? Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of some of the ones that I've used before in here that I know are in here, and I can't think of it now. Let's see if yep, there it is. So so you can see like you already kind of have like a cartoony smoke effect going with this one that's faded. And what it's doing is most of the stuff is just all set to default. Like use this material, use this emitter origin rotation. You can set it locally within the thing, because if you have multiples, right, like that fire one, if we do a new one, right now they're doubled up, right? I'm actually going to just duplicate this so I don't have to set that again. So now we've got two doubled up, but if we go and required on this one and we say, go start 50 units over to the right, you can see now they're separate, right? And that's how they separated the sprite sheets in that fire one, was they were just creating offsets here in the required area. So I'm just checking through here if there's anything else that's important to go over. This is all default stuff. You can obviously, there's a lot of stuff you can dig deep into in here. There's ranges on here. Right now it's set to like 1 second, which it's a little bit longer than 1 second for it to spawn here and fade off the top. But that's the math that it's claiming is working on here. Yeah, it's claiming there's a min 1 second, max 1 second. So each one's taking 1 full second. So just to make it easier to see what we're working with, I'm going to go back to 1. We're going to go back and, well, let's cover spawn. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's spawn rates, which is right now it's saying spawn 20 of these sprites. If I set it to 100, you can see it's way thicker, right? And again, this is all watch your performance. You could put 1 million of these in here if you wanted to, but you're going to not have performance because these have a transparency on them. So the rate scale, you can change all of this stuff to, make it look how you want. But the one that you're going to mess with the most is this constant under rate spawn. I'm going to go back to 10, where it was at before. Lifetime is how long this is. There's a min max range right now because it's set to the distribution set to float uniform. You can do whatever you want. Curve. You can have a particle parameter in here that you're injecting from outside of the particle, like through blueprints, giving an instruction for how long it should be alive. There's uniform and uniform curve. For things like this, for just a time that's afloat, this is great because you can say, I want to set max 1 or min 1, max 3. And now you see it's a different behavior and you're getting a little bit more elegant fall off on it at the top, right? Because they're all alive for 1 second and then the fall off starts happening after 1 second. Like they're either, right, fading off by 1 or somewhere in between to 3. Initial size, same idea. And right now it's set to vector uniform. And you kind of need this because you need XYZ twice. And you can have this be different too. There's a min max of, right now it's 25 and all the way around. But if we set this to 25 to 100 all the way around, you would see we'd start getting varied sizes in, right? So like, hopefully all of this makes sense. Same thing with velocity, starting velocity. We could give it, I wonder if it's going to automatically take a Z velocity. We're going to find out. Yeah, it's not actually using it. It's all still going at the same rate. Let's see what happens if we give it a uniform. No. That was constant. That's constant. It was uniform. I don't even think it's using this. It doesn't appear that it is. If we wanted to vary it, we could give it a, try to give it acceleration. And then you can do curves like velocity over life. And then you get access to the curve editor to set it to different lifetimes. So it's like slow at the beginning and fast in the middle and then slow at the end again, and things like that. So acceleration, I want to see what happens if we set this to be more varied. Yeah, and now it's heading off in a positive X and a positive Y direction. So if we set this to have more variety, that if we say the max is going to be 50, but the min is negative 50 on X, oops. And if we do the same thing on Y, now we should get a cone-like. Yep. Now we're getting more of a cone-like distribution, right? On acceleration, because it's saying like you can go plus 50 or negative 50, right? And if we say your Z acceleration is, right now it's saying 25 and 50, but if I said it's like 500 and negative 500, you should get, yep. Now you're seeing them head down and up, right? So if you wanted it to be in like a ball shape, you would have to put all of them at 500 and minus 500. So they'd all try and go off in all the different directions at the same time. There's color over life. You can change the color of them. You can add gravity to them if you change them to a, if we say new emitter, do we have access to the, I think we'd have to turn GPU sprites on. Type data. There it is, new GPU sprites. So GPU sprites can be affected by gravity and can have physics on them, which are really neat. I'm not going to go over those because we have like 5 minutes left and there's time to answer like one more question. Does anybody have any questions about particles real quick? Or is there something else you'd like to see in the next 5 minutes? Because I unfortunately have a hard stop at 7 tonight. Anyone?
Doesn't look like it.
How does everybody like the new weather app in the taskbar?
Oh, and
You know what?
Windows.
This is honestly, it doesn't bother me. This is what bothers me about it. That I want more information on the weather. I don't want traffic updates. I don't want Washington Post top stories or USA Today. I don't need stock recommendations. I don't 76ers and the Hawks. Who cares? Like, what is all of this? This is not weather. It's just like more Microsoft advertising. So I don't mind that it's showing what the temperature is and it's mostly cloudy. It's all this other garbage in here. So, any rate. Oh, and we didn't show it back in the world what it's doing again. So this one still has that. Oh, because we put the new one in here. This one, the GPU sprites one. No other questions. Got 4 minutes.
Well, that's really cool. Where can folks find your current work and stuff?
I'm always on Twitter. It's at Gameism with no dash in it. Same as the handle here. And I usually post stuff as often as I can that I'm working on. Most of the stuff that I'm doing now is, excuse me, I'm sorry, is I do virtual production now for a company that's doing virtual studios for the NBA used our studios for the NBA 2K esports series that they ran. So like our studios were on ESPN and stuff, which was fun. That they were broadcasting out of, right? There's I've done a bunch of other studios for other streamers. There's a really fun one in my pinned tweet of it's like the last really cool studio that I could show. Where I recorded myself against my green screen here in my basement and put myself in the studio describing what it does. If folks want to go look at it, I can actually drop it. Why don't I just drop it here in the chat really quick for folks? Make life easier for everybody. So it's pinned, so it's easy to get to. So this is I'm just gonna put it in your general if that's okay. Or do you want me to put it in a different one?
Yeah, general's fine.
Wait, that's actually that's in the welcome. You don't want it in there. There you go. And you just Discord never embeds the video, so you're gonna have to click through. But at any rate, that's my account. So again, it's the stuff that I'm doing day to day in Unreal is like obviously I'm doing a lot of this stuff. I don't work with landscapes as much, but it's like a lot of green screen stuff, tech, and a lot of video streaming tech. And it's like a lot of the weirder side of Unreal that people aren't using as much of, but I guess Epic is trying to get more people involved in now. I know they did a big workshop a few months ago for virtual production to get people in it. And that was like a lot of Hollywood style virtual production.
Mm.
So anyway, yeah. So that's I've published VR games in Unreal, right? Like like AA and AAA traditional games in Unreal, mobile games in Unreal. So yeah, if folks have questions, feel free to ask me. And if I can help you, I will. If it's like a short, easy to answer thing, always happy to help out. But yeah, that's it. That's me.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
So hopefully that was helpful for folks. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get into more stuff. I wish I had more time to spend with y'all. Maybe I can come back at a later date and do another one.
Oh yeah, definitely. When especially when Unreal 5 gets more stable, definitely want to check out some of that cool advanced nanite stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll go ahead and let you get out of here, and we'll go ahead and wrap up the stream.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Hope folks have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
You too. Thanks. Bye.